morning, everybody. Kia ora. My name is Robert Madison. I am the Director of ICT for the Ministry of Education. And we have Christina Crouch, who is our newly appointed Principal of our online learning school. So, we're here today to talk a little bit about our journey into e-learning and online learning. Te Kura Uira is the name of our project. Te Kura is to be used for the words knowledge, and Uira is reference to electrical. And we've combined that to be the spearhead for our project. So we're going to do this in two parts. We'll talk a little bit about our initial journey into it, and then we're going to talk about our current e-learning school. Start with, the most important thing for us was we needed to identify the need for e-learning. We looked at our current distance education programs, and a lot of them were not working. In our isolated islands, it was very difficult to have the expertise available on island. The size of the school required some of the teachers having to teach from new entrance ECE right through to NCA levels 1 and 2. And you've got one teacher teaching 30 or 40 students on small islands, and up to 10 levels per lesson. The size and economies of trying to have multiple people on island made it very difficult. The correspondence program was implemented for some of the other island schools, but we had big difficulties with this. I guess we didn't believe we were living up to our goals, and this is one of our main goals for education. So we had to look hard about how we could help our isolated learners. So the first thing we did was we asked questions, lots of questions. We talked to the New Zealand net clusters. We had close relationships with principals and staff, talked to students in those clusters and how they're operating. We had contacts within the New Zealand education staff, their LMS developers, how they deployed, what they did. We spoke to online teachers all over the place, students who had done it, younger students, adult students. We talked to the USP and investigated some of the technology USP had been using. And we signed up to lots of courses. We tried it ourselves. We wanted to see how different online programs were operating and what we got out of it. I guess most importantly, after all of that, is we listened. So even though we asked a lot of questions, the main thing was to listen and find out what's been going for us. After that, we developed a small-scale pilot. And so this was just to test the waters to see what could actually be done with the technology we had available. And so this was a very small-scale pilot. Initially, it was to help support the current correspondence system and provide tutor support for students. It was also to help provide extra resources for students. So we did all the usual things. We built an LMS, we created online courses, we hired local tutors, and that was a key component for us. We wanted the local language and people understood the local context and environment that we're operating in. And so we pushed that forward, and we actually ran it over 2 years on a smaller scale. And some of the things that we found out from this is that the bilingual tutors helped a lot. The ability to communicate in English and in Māori was very important, especially in terms of trying to interpret the knowledge on the other end for students and put it into a different context. So that was quite powerful. The content and context of the experts was now available for students when they required it. So even though they might be on correspondence doing science, they now had access to people who could help them. Technology, and this is one thing that's come up before, is definitely exciting and it motivates students. They were excited to learn, they were in the class, they were there all the time. We also expanded this, we won't go into details, but some of the projects, as you know, sort of take sidetracks, and we encouraged our tutors to just roll with it. And so from it, we found out that we could really work with at-risk students. English as second language, remedial programs, and adult programs also came into it. Courses could be monitored much better and managed by the tutor. Correspondence coursework was completed on time, and we were gaining Unit Standard credits from New Zealand. We did find that audio, email, and chat applications worked quite well. Some of the things that didn't necessarily work so well. Technology is always a barrier for us here. We operate over satellite, especially to our isolated islands. So even though O3Bs come into the Cook Islands, that's great for the southern group. Our northern group still misses out. Hopefully there will be a trickle-on effect where they'll be able to redirect some of the satellite feeds and we'll get better speeds and connectivity to the north, but it's still a barrier. So the need for video is a big one for us. And at the moment, the satellite capacity is not really good enough. We're getting some one-to-one sort of activities, but we would like to get some one-to-multiple activities, especially as we'll have multiple islands and one tutor and students all collaborating together. So that needs to be developed further. Student knowledge of technology was also a bit of an issue, and so that's one of the things that we have to work with them in advance to make sure that they can hit the ground running when they want to operate and run these programs. Approach, we were taking tutors had quite often come out of the classroom environment. They were bringing their resources from face to face, putting it online, and away we go. And so there's a lot of work that needed to be done about pedagogy, how teachers were approaching the online environment, and changing the way they operate. Support is another key one. In the Northern Island groups, it was very difficult to have eyes and ears on students all the time. The current principal or staff is not always available to support them, and so we developed a model where we employed facilitators who came in, and these are not teachers. These are more a pastoral role type of care. And it's interesting because New Zealand actually came along and did exactly the same thing as well. So they had EDs, they call them, and it's a pastoral care type of role, and so we found that works very well. Their job is to mentor the students, encourage them. They're also there to be a bit of a policeman when you need it. So it's your eyes and ears on the ground, but they don't need to be a teaching expert. They're an extension of the teacher on the scene. And ownership for the program was another difficult one, so it's about getting the schools on board, the ministry on board. The program is developed through the ICT division, but of course it includes a lot of development and production, resourcing, hiring, jobs, all sorts of things, and so the scope of it gets beyond just one division's needs or capacity, and so that's something the ministry needs to really look into. The key thing, and I have to say I am so happy to see that this has been said twice already, this will load, it's not about the technology, it's about people. People make the biggest difference, and it's people who've got to change. So the ministry, after all of our first 2 years, we had to sit back and take a look at what we've done, what had worked well, where we thought this program could go, and so the ministry decided to take ownership for the program and take it into a more of a full-scale model. And let's take the next slide. The Kura virtual school is now in its first year of a 2-year pilot project, where this is a pretty much a full-time school, targeting year 19 students, and we've employed 2 full-time teachers to run this program. So it's something the ministry has decided to commit to, and we want to really see how we can push the boundaries of providing education and quality education to all of our students. And I'll hand over to Christina Couch, who is our principal of our online school, and she'll talk you through our initiatives.
Thank you, Rob. Kia ora koutou katoa. It's nice to be here. My name is Christina, and I've been privileged to be a part of this exciting initiative for the start of this year. So we've been running now the full-time program for the first term, and we've certainly experienced some great successes as well as some challenges. Initially my role in Te Kura Uira was to consider the teaching and learning issues on island, to consider the learning needs of our students, secondary students on our remote islands, the ambitions of the Ministry of Education, which are outlined in the Education Master Plan for ICT integration. Then to take these complex considerations, and I note that one of the professors had said that there is a real complexity to designing these things, and then put together a program that best bridged the gap for our secondary kids and provided equitable, quality access to secondary level education. Te Kura Uira has been built with a commitment to evolution and improvement. As our capacity for internet technologies grows and expands, the needs of our students and the abilities of our students grows, so must our school. So an attitude in reflection and growth is compulsory in working within e-learning. There are many different models of e-learning globally, and like the Professor had mentioned, it's about finding one that best fits your context and the needs of your learners. In order for us to build a program that was going to be relevant, that is a bit slow. We had to build a, we decided to build a profile of the learner, the context in which Kura Uira would be participating in, so that's the families, the communities, and once we had that profile, we knew our limitations, we knew our considerations for deciding on a model. We considered age, gender, language, the experience of the children. We didn't focus on what they couldn't do. We asked ourselves, what do our children use technology for already? And how can we leverage that and build something that's relevant for them that they can participate in immediately? Mobile technologies was one. They all had cell phones. They knew how to send emails. They knew how to Facebook. They knew how to use Twitter. So we already knew that our kids yearned for collaboration, socialisation, and we wanted to leverage that in our build for our online school. With every great idea, there are limitations. We decided to go with a blended model approach, which means that some students would be engaging in the online learning environment. Because of bandwidth, we could only have a certain amount of students online on these remote islands at one particular time. So we also needed to have other activities that were meaningful, contextually based, that were also offline and available to them, that didn't diminish their ability to access support from teachers, tutors, facilitators, or the community. So a blended model approach we found was the best fit model for our particular context in the Cook Islands. A little bit about online learning. Currently our students receive tuition or their lessons through webinars, video-style lectures, collaborative Google Docs, messages via their cell phones, alerting them that their assignment might have changed. There's lots and lots of ways that we choose to communicate with our students. We also use Skype video conferencing, which we find to be effective. Lessons might be asynchronous or synchronous, meaning they might be with your teacher in real time, or they might be pre-recorded lessons that they can access and watch over and over again. If a lesson is synchronous, then we record it and it then becomes available for them to watch at a later date if they might have missed something or having a little snooze. The other aspect that we're really proud of is that we can provide skilled teachers not just from within our small office at the Ministry of Education, but we can really globalise and give access to teachers from New Zealand, from Australia, and give them access to things like Khan Academy, Coursera, massive open online courses, so that the content is relevant and more in quality and the best for their needs at that particular time, which is really important, I think, for that secondary level specific content knowledge focus. Offline, the students are working on developing their critical thinking skills. That was a precursor skill to e-learning that we really needed to address. So they work through a circuit. This is an example of our literacy circuit where there's a range of activities where they might be examining a text or an article. They're collaborative in their approach when they're working within the classroom. They also have agency over their education by deciding on how they'd like to present their understanding. So they have iPads and other devices available and software, so they can choose the way or the method in which they demonstrate their learning back to the tutors, which is really engaging and motivating for them, that they feel like they can do that for themselves. We connect with New Zealand regularly. So here's a photo of Rosmini College in Auckland, and we have weekly lessons with them in which the boys, the Year 12 boys, are working towards health unit standards. So their contribution to the Cook Islands is it's a reciprocated benefit. And our students have a real life experience of practicing their English skills. Having taken into consideration all of our complexities and our successes and our needs of our students and the values of the community, we put together a vision of what we wanted to, or what we saw Te Kura Uira would be in 5 years' time. And here's our vision that we have. You can see that there's some important key buzzwords that are in there, such as quality, collaboration, sharing, which really reflects the 21st century nature of globalised education. And that's something that's at the forefront of our thinking when we design and implement courses within Te Kura Uira. For the future, again, points that have been already highlighted. Accessibility. It's always typical, you give an IT presentation and that doesn't it? Accessibility is a big one, an aspect for us to, we want to expand other islands, bring them on board, we can do this. Sustainability, getting away from donor funding, that was also mentioned earlier, which I was really pleased about. Measurability, having evidence that this is really working, participating in research projects and such, so that we can quantifiably prove that what we're doing is successful. And quality, always quality. That is the focus and goal of Te Kura Uira. So on that note, I'd like to leave you. Thank you very much for your time. Maybe you might